Welcome back. So, as our closing moments here, Dr. Udzev, so your response to the waste management issue and emergency situation.
Okay. And you talk
Please
about,
make it quick.
Yeah, somebody talk about collapse of drainages that are built with blocks instead of concrete. That is one of the challenges we are having in the state. In the beginning, I mentioned something about insufficient or poor drainages, because most of this comes as a result of, most of this citation of these drainages comes as a result of the collapsed drainages. So at this collapse, it now paves ways for the citating of these drainages. This thing gets blocked because you can see that some of this refuge, by mistake, as residents drop inside these drainages. Ordinarily, they're supposed to move. But because some of these drainages collapse, it now blocks the movement of this, and now makes sand to cover this and makes this into overflow, causing the flooding. So these are some of the things we're talking about.
You mentioned about installation of refuse collection points. Now, there's only one at Rail Market in Makurdi. Should there be only one around the Rail Market?
Railway Market?
Yeah.
Railway Market is a small market.
So it should be only one refuse point.
Yes, the bucket there is enough to accommodate the waste generated by the market.
From what I'm seeing, this picture I'm seeing, it doesn't look like.
Is this a bucket you need or a skip?
A very big, when I talk about a bucket, a big
How often is
waste
it moved?
collector.
How often is it moved?
Daily.
Daily?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Naja?
No, I'm not doctor.
No, Mr. Naja. You want to say something?
Your closing statement.
Okay, no, thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to use the opportunity to also call on the federal government and development partners. This is the time that Benue really needs their inputs, and we are open to discussions on infrastructural development and all. So you're always welcome to Benue State, and we'll receive them with open arms.
Okay. Here, Jonathan, one of your partners, development partners. Here, Jonathan, your final words, please. Can't hear her.
The recession is
yeah, we can't hear you. Hopefully, we'll be able to get that final word before you go. Dr. Jibuno. Nature. See this, according to that map that I showed you earlier, yes. Cross River is lying below sea level, but there are no floods, hardly any no floods. Akwa Ibom is lying below sea level, no floods. But Lagos is below sea level, yes, and usually gets flooded. Benue is below sea level and gets flooded. Yeah. Kogi about the same thing.
Nature is being pushed to the wall, and nature is beginning to fight back.
Yes.
Until we start looking at that. And not just in Nigeria, but globally. I'll go back to Victoria Island when it was being dredged. The whole of Victoria Island. If you stood by Ahmadu Bello Way, then you will look down on the beach. In fact, you have
about
to
half
travel
a mile down.
Yeah, to meet the beach. Today, the beach is looking over Victoria Island. Why? Because of the anticipated development that was going to happen after the dredging. And that has come. And Victoria Island is now settling to a point where the slightest storm, the type we have all over, the wind speed along Victoria Island Beach now is somewhere between 40 and 50 miles an hour. The ones that causes all these catastrophes you hear goes to about 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. So you can begin to see how we are moving. Once the eye of that kind of storm comes over, the whole of Victoria Island will be gone. But then let me tell you what was done in the environmental impact assessment report that was written then in the 60s. That was anticipated, and for that reason they built the canals, the primary and secondary canals that would take excess water in the event that there is an overflow from the beach to the lagoon. Where are those canals today? Where are both primary and secondary canals? They are not there. which is why you have this regular flows. Because once you have an overflow from the beach, coupled with the excessive rainfall that we are beginning to get now as a result of climate change, we are in trouble. We are in serious trouble. And unlike what is happening all over the world, look at the evacuation that is taking place in Florida or in Houston. Houston is a wetland. Yes. Yeah. All right? But look at the mitigation and things that they are doing. If you are to evacuate Victoria Island today and Lekki and Banana Island, for instance, where are you going to evacuate them to?
Upland.
Okay. Upland. That is one side. And then still talking about nature. And that goes to the issue of wetland and floodplains. Most of these places were meant to be migration spots, biodiversities that migrate from one end of the country to the other, or one end of the continent to the other. People have gone to build on them. So what happens to the biodiversity?
No, it looks like we're not taking this matter of water channels seriously.
Yes.
Because people are actually giving approvals for structures to be put on those plains. And like you said earlier, that the penalties now for those who gave approval to people who built on those things. Now, to your mind, what should be done in other areas of the country when people are actually carrying approvals for what we can safely term illegal structures?
I started my practice for Federal Ministry of Works in the late 60s. Then, even though Federal Ministry of Works had nothing to do with giving approval to, but they got, the drawings were sent to a department in the ministry to look at certain aspects of things like that, so that if before an approval is given, because they had the contour of the entire city and the entire country, they were the ones that will look at these things. Why are we not going back to that kind of practice? It goes back to what I was. We have to look back.
History.
We look at us building the Eco-Atlantic. I mean, maybe at a later program one can talk about that. Because that's what is happening to VI today. If care is taken, even with the perfect environmental impact assessment we have on the Eco-Atlantic city, who is going to ensure that 20, 30, 40 years from now down the line, somebody is going to stick to those regulations to ensure that... You see, that is the issue. We tend to brush aside some of these very, very important things. Do you know that, in the 60s, when I was, like I said, in the Ministry of Works, you don't drill a borehole unless you get permission. You don't drill. Because they have...
I think they've gone back to that now in Lagos State. Because people were just digging holes everywhere, and the Lagos State